In this video, we'll implement dark mode in Angular using Angular Material custom themes and local storage. As we can see, we can click the slider and that will toggle the theme from light mode to dark mode, and it also persists it to local storage. So when we reload the browser, we can see that we get the dark mode. So let's go ahead and create this. I've already done an ng new project, and I'll just go ahead and also add the Angular material. So we can do ng add at Angular material, and I'll just wait for that to load. So I'll go ahead and I'll click custom here because we want to do a custom theme. So we can just click yes to these, and while that's loading, let's take a look at how we can create a custom theme quite easily. And I'll link this in the description, but there's this website and it allows you to change and toggle between light and dark mode, and it also allows you to choose your palette. So you could change this color if you wanted to, and then you can just go to export and you can just copy that code, and we'll do that in just a moment. So now that that's loaded, we can just go ahead and copy this, and we can actually just click this button here to copy it to the clipboard. And if we go into our source folder and we go into the styles SCSS file, we can just do a Control A and delete everything, and Control V. And if we just take a look at this file, we need to import Angular Material theming because we're doing some custom theming, and also the core functionality from Material. But the way Angular Material works in its theming is that there is three main colors. There's a primary, an accent, and a worn. So in this primary, we have different shades. So the 100, 500, 700, and there's also the contrast, and there's also the accent. So because we're in an SCSS file, we can create this variable, and that's how we can define the matte primary palette. We have this matte core functionality, so we can use this mixin for the matte palette by passing in the primary scheme for the primary palette, and also the accent scheme for that accent palette. And there's also a worn palette if you like. But we can go ahead and we can just make this light theme, and there's actually something built into Angular Material, which is the matte light theme, and that just takes the palettes that we created. So I'm just going to make some modifications here. So in the styles SCSS file, I want to have the light mode or dark mode on the body of the entire application, and I want to toggle between light mode and dark mode. So I actually want to create a class called light mode, and then I'll just put this include statement, and I can include the Angular Material theme. This is all built into Angular Material, and we can just pass in that app light theme that we just created, and that's going to be applied to the class light mode, which is going to be on the body of our entire application. So what that's going to do is it's going to let the Angular Material components, such as the navigation bar and the sidebar, choose those selected colors and apply them. So we can do the same thing for the dark theme. There's the matte dark theme, and it takes the same palette, and we can just call this dark mode to keep it consistent. And we can go ahead and we can also just add in some basic styling. So just making the HTML and body 100% and taking the margin off it, and the font family Roboto, and that's just copied from the Angular material, what that spits out before I copied and pasted this code from the website. So I can go ahead and save that. So because we're using Angular material, I'm going to need to import a few modules. So in the app module, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just copy some over that I've defined before. And we will also need the forms module because we're going to use an ng model on the slider. So we can go ahead and import those, and we can also go ahead and import the modules. We can now use the Angular CLI to generate a service for our theme. So we can just say ng for generate, s for service, and I'm just going to call this service the theme service. And I don't want the spec file, so I can just do a -- skip test. So we can open that up. Now, I'm not going to worry about the architecture or the structure of the application. And I'm also going to create a component. We're going to create a dialog component. And we can do that by using ng-gc, and I'm just going to call this dialog, and I'll also skip the test. And that's pretty much all the components and all the CLI we'll need. So I'll just open that up. And this is essentially this dialog here. So just to make sure that the colors seep through into the components, because this dialog, it adds a like a DOM element into the DOM. So we're going to need to make sure that not only just the components, the static ones such as the nav bars and stuff like that, but also in their own sections also need to be applied. So let's look at this theme service. And the idea is, what we need to do is we need to manipulate the DOM, and we can use the Renderer2 class, which is an abstraction provided by Angular, which is a service, and allows us to manipulate elements of the app without having to touch the DOM directly. And this is the recommended approach. So this is the Angular way to modify the DOM. So in the theme service, I want to, alongside the injectable, I want to import the Renderer2 function or service. And I also want the renderer factory, and that's needed to create the Renderer2. So right up the top here, we can just create a private variable here, and we can just call it renderer. And this is going to be the Renderer2. So in the construction, we can inject the renderer factory. And it's of type renderer factory 2. And that's needed to create the renderer. And we can do this just here in the constructor. So we can set this dot renderer, and we could do this on the ng on init, but we can just do it here for simplicity. And there's a function called create renderer, and we can just pass in null and null here, because if we take a look at the IntelliSense, we can see that there's a host element and a type, where the type is a base class to implement. And since this is a service, this is going to be doesn't need to be defined here, because we're going to use it for our body element later on. So one thing we need to do is we need to also define another variable here, and we can make this private as well. And this is going to be the theme, or the color theme. So we can just go ahead and we can call this color theme, and this is going to be a string. So we can start by creating some helper functions. So these are functions that are just going to be used to set or get the current theme. So is it light mode or is it dark mode? So the first thing we want to be able to do is we want to be able to set the color theme. So I'm just going to create this private function here. So set color theme, and this is going to take whatever the theme class is. So I'll just call this theme, and inside this function, this is where we can just go ahead and we can set this dot color theme equal to the theme that gets passed into it. So this theme that's going to get passed into it, this is going to correlate to these classes here. So we're just going to pass the string in light mode or the string in dark mode here. So when we're setting, we want to persist this to local storage. So when the user closes the browser and they reopen it, they're able to get their preferred colors here. So I'm just going to call this user theme, and we can just go ahead and we can just pass in the theme variable. So the second helper that we need is just to be able to retrieve that from local storage. So we're going to need a get function here. So get color theme, and we just need an if statement here, and if something in local storage is set, so if local storage dot get item, and if for the key user theme is set, we can get that, and we can go ahead and we can set our variable here, this dot color theme, and this can go ahead and just simply be assigned to that. Otherwise, we can go ahead and we can set this color theme, and if nothing's set, we can just have a default theme and we can just set that to light mode. So I can save that. So I got our set color theme and our get color theme. We want to be able to use this within another component, and we need to determine whether it is dark mode or not, and we can create a function for that. So we can just call this is dark mode, and this is quite simple here. We can just go ahead and we can just return this dot color theme and whether or not that is equal to dark mode. So if it's equal to dark mode, it will return true, otherwise it will return false, and then we can use that result as needed. So we're going to need an initialization function for when the component loads up. So we can go ahead and we can use our get color theme when the page loads up initially. So we can say, we can call this initial theme or init theme, and this is just going to call that function get color theme. Then we can use the renderer to add a class, and we want to add it to the body of the document because we don't want just the Angular material components, but also things like the dialogue and things that are being rendered during runtime. And we want to do this the Angular way rather than, because it has benefits over the simply window adding classes like that. So what we want to add to the body is the color theme. So we can just say this.color theme, and we're going to pass what that is when we use it in the component. So we have our initial theme here. So all we need now is we need to be able to update our theme. So when the user triggers that slide function, that they can, the slide toggle bar, they need to be able to update this. So they're going to take whatever the theme is, and we can just say here this is going to be either dark mode or light mode. And this is where we can go ahead and set the color theme. So we can say this.set color theme, and we need to pass what the theme that we're setting into it. So we want to remove the class from the previous setting. So if it's on light mode and we're switching to dark mode, we want to take light mode off the body, and then we also want to add the class dark mode. So we need to know what the previous class is. So I can just go ahead and create this constant variable, and I'm just going to call it previous color theme, and that's the CSS class. And we can set this equal to the theme variable, and if that is equal to dark mode, we can just go ahead and use this ternary operator here, and that means the previous class was light mode because we want to change it to dark mode. And if it wasn't and it was light mode, then we want to change it to dark mode. So that's the previous class. Next, what we want to do is we want to use the renderer to remove the class from the document body, and that class is just the previous color theme. And we can copy that down, but we can modify the remove class method to add class, and this is just going to be the theme. So we've gone and we've created our service here. The next thing we want to do is we just want to look at our app component. So I've just got the standard app component here. I'm going to go ahead and just copy all this and delete it. And I'm just going to run an npm start. So recall, this is what we're aiming for here. And this is the latest edition, so there's nothing quite there yet. So let's just start off, and we can start by adding our dialog. Oh, we can start by adding our toolbar first. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this over from that material. So in the toolbar, in the examples here, I can just go ahead and copy this, and I can just copy this mat toolbar. I can add it in to our HTML. Now I just want to make a couple of modifications here. So, and actually I don't want this particular toolbar here. I want the colored one. So let's go ahead and copy this, this one here. So we've got the primary color, and actually we might make it even simpler and use the one with less here. So I'll just go ahead and copy this first, and then I'm going to go ahead and delete something. So this second part here. So we've got our map toolbar, the map toolbar row, we got the span, we just call it my app. We have this example spacer, which we can just use a quick inline style here, and we can just say flex 110 auto, and this is just going to fill the space between this and the next part here. So what I'm going to do here for this button is I might just say, okay, I'm not going to have the matte dialog button just yet. I'm just going to make the slide toggle first. So if I make the matte slide toggle, click enter, and I can use the banana in the box with the ng model directive to bind the variable here to the template, as well as back into the TypeScript. And I'm going to have this variable called isDarkMode, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to add that into the component, into the TypeScript. isDarkMode, yep. And I'm also going to need a click event. So I'm going to put this here. I'm going to put this click event here, and I can just go ahead and call this toggle dark mode and call this function. So let's just go ahead and save that and see where we're at. Oh, of course I need to define the function. So I can just go ahead and I can create that function there, and I'll just do a console log just to make sure everything's running all right. So now we can see, okay, and I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to delete this from local storage now. As we can see, the light, there is a bar there, but there's no color. And that's because in our styling, we didn't include it directly, and we could do that. That would be another approach, but I've chosen to use this light mode. So if we take a look at the body, if we typed in light mode here, you can now see that we can actually see the switch here. So we're going to need to work on that. I might just add some text next to this button to say dark mode. So within the matte slide toggle, I can just say dark mode here, and I can save that. So now we actually want to do something with the toggling. And we're going to need to use the service that we just created. So we've called this the theme service. So we need a constructor to inject it into. So if we have this constructor in our app component, we can have this private theme service of the type theme service. And I can just go ahead and do a control dot to get the IntelliSense to import that theme. And what I want to do is I want to call the init theme on the constructor. So within the body of the constructor, I can just say this dot theme service dot init theme. So recall that the init theme, all that's doing is it's getting the theme, and if it's something exists in local storage, you'll get that. Otherwise, we'll just take light mode as the default. So we have this variable here is dark mode, and that's being bound to this matte slider toggle. So if dark mode is selected, we'll see that it will be switched on. Otherwise, it will be switched off. So we can actually just go ahead and we can just assign this is dark mode equal to the isDarkMode method that we created in the service. So that means now we have that set up. In our toggle dark mode function, what we can do here is we can just go ahead, and so we initially get it when the component loads, and then we get isDarkMode, but every time we click the switch we need to fetch that data, and that's just in the service. It's not dynamic or anything like that, but it might be in practice. But because we're just going to save it to local storage, and we can just do it in a simple way without observables or anything like that. So we can just use the theme service isDarkMode, and then what we're going to do is, okay, so we can use an if statement here. So if it is dark mode, we want to switch to the light mode, so we can use the theme service for that, and we can use the update method, and we can update it to light mode. Otherwise it's not dark mode and it's light mode, so that means when we're toggling it, we want to toggle it to dark mode. So if it's dark mode, what we want to do is we want to just call the update so actually we can just use a ternary instead here. So we can just say if it's dark mode, do that, otherwise do that. And I'm just going to comment that out, but I'm pretty sure that works. So let's go ahead and save that. So now we can see, okay, that works. And if we switch, we can see that the class dark mode is being applied. But notice we're actually not seeing any colors being changed, and that's because we don't have any components that actually have that color changing. So let's go ahead and add one, and then we can just check that the data is persisting to local storage, and it is, and that's all working good. So we can go ahead and we can just delete this code. So okay, we can start by creating the sidebar component, because that sidebar component, that's going to have the color change. So actually, before we even do that, I just want to mention that the dark mode and light mode, that's being applied to the Angular material components, but it may be the case that we want this white background to change, and we might want the text to change as well. So let's just say that we had some text here like that. We save that. We might want to change the background color, and we might want to change that to say a dark color, and we might want the color to change to a light color. So I might just use this white smoke. I'll save that, and we can see that now when we change it, we have that change of the background color. So that's great. So what we can do now is we can just go ahead and we can get the slide. Oh no, we've got the slide toggle. We want the Side Nav Component. So if we look at the examples here, and we just copy this code from the Angular material website, we can go ahead and we can go back to our app component, and just below this toolbar here, I'm just going to add this. I'm not going to create components for each of these. It's more just to demonstrate the toggling from light mode to dark mode functionality. But of course, feel free to spruce this up a little. And in the app component here, I'm just going to go ahead and just copy the styling here from the example. And I'm just going to go ahead and copy that up. Put it in here. Now we're getting an error, and that's just because we just don't have one of the variables defined. So there's this show is filler. I might slightly separate that. That needs to be added to the component here. Show filler. And we can just go ahead and just save that. And what we get, okay, we get something like this. So we'll just make a couple of tweaks to this. But we can see if we change from dark mode, that angular material component actually changes from light mode to dark mode. So some of them do, some of them don't. So in this app component here, let's just make a couple of tweaks. I'm not going to have the nested one. And actually that can do. That'll do. We just won't have the nested one. And one thing that we might do is we might just go ahead and we might just change the dimensions of this. So in the CSS file that I copied, I'm going to change the width to 50% and the height to 100%. And let's just see what that does. Okay, so we got something like this. That's great. And we can go ahead and change that. So I just want to do one more thing, and that's the dialog, because the dialog's a little different. We can go ahead and we can see the effects of that, but essentially our application is in the app root, but what happens with the dialog is a new DOM element is created. So that's why we've chosen the body here. It's fully dark mode so it can be applied to, and I'm just going to show that those rendered pages will actually receive the mode or the theme. So let's do that. So actually I've made a component for that already. I made this dialog component here. And actually we don't really need much in this, but I might just go ahead and just add a little bit of lorem here. So I might just do a lorem 40 and use Emmet to generate a little bit of text here. But there's no data or anything associated with that. So all we really need to do is just, well, I need the name of that, but that's about it. And we can go to our app component and we can go ahead and we can import the map dialog from Angular Material Dialog. So let's go ahead and get that. Now I've got my theme service here already, but what we need to do is we actually need to import the dialog component. And the reason we need that is we just need a reference to the bit of dialog that we're going to open from this section. So basically in our app component, in our HTML, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to add one more thing next to this button here. I'm going to add a button here next to Matt's slide toggle. So if I add this button and I give it the Matt button directive, I can give this a click event, and on this click in event I can just say open dialog, and I can just go ahead and copy and just save that. And from the TypeScript over here in the example, I can just go ahead and copy this open dialog, and I can copy this constructor as well, or the arguments of the constructor at least. So I've already got a constructor, so let's just inject the mat dialog service. And if I go back to the Angular Material website, I can just go ahead and copy this method here, open dialog, and that's all we really need. And we can just go ahead and put this function just here. Don't really need that space there. We can actually just change this to the name of the component. So I just called it Dialog Component. So we can just call this component here. And we don't really have a result or anything like that. So we can just go ahead and we can just say dialog closed. So what we've done is we've created a dialog and we just put some lorem text in there. So that's why we don't have any values here, but we need this after closed observable. So we can just go ahead and subscribe that so that can just close the dialog ref for us. So let's go ahead and we can see what all this has given us. Okay. Oh, I just need some text in this button here. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'll just call this the just open dialog, just so we have something to click on. So yeah, and we can see that the toggle side nav has also received the map button. And if we open the dialog, we can see that we get this nice dark theme here. And if we change it to light mode, we can see that we get the light theme. If I go to application, delete the local storage, reset, we can see that we get light mode by default. We can switch to dark mode, and if I reset now, well then it just calls dark mode for us. So I hope that video was helpful, and that's how we can use Angular Material and theming with Angular Material. So thanks so much for watching, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel.